Okay, good evening. This is the Rutland Town Planning Commission. And it's our first meeting for 2023. It's January 5th. Welcome, everyone. And let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance, if we will. Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. The meeting has been called to order, and the first order of business is the approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda. Second.
Got a couple of seconds. Any discussion, any changes to the agenda? Okay, all those in favor of it as it reads, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, we don't have any public. We do have someone in the audience tonight, but that is for our first item under new business, the subdivision. I don't believe there's anyone in Zoom call other than Mary Beth. So let's move down to new business. And we have a proposed subdivision for Route 4 East. And we have, it says here Howard Smith is the owner, but tonight with us is Mark Kersell representing Howard Smith.
I actually did the surveying for this.
Okay, and we've got the surveys here. There's copies for everyone. We've got the permit forms.
I pass these out.
Sure. Does everyone have this too?
Yes. I have it.
We've got a list of adjoining landowners, it looks like.
Thank you.
Was that emailed out?
No, it came in today.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, Mary Beth.
That's okay.
Getting there with it? Okay, thanks, Sandy. Thank you.
So Mark, I'll have you come up here where it says Sherman Hunter.
Here we go, Norm.
We can pick you up really well on the microphone. For the TV audience. And we have a huge one. I don't know that, but you know.
Emmy Award, right?
Okay, the floor is yours to tell us what's going on here.
Okay, so for those that have lived in the area for a while, this was the Edson Goodrich property until recently. It is also just west of what used to be the Nordic, pardon?
I was just clearing my throat, sorry.
Just west of what used to be the Nordic Motel. So it's on the southerly side of Route 4. Almost opposite Post Road. And so what we've done is we separated out the house and the apartment with 2.67 acres. And we're planning on retaining 5.56 acres, which we've labeled parcel B. For future development. The owner has no plans at this time. And that's why, you know, we didn't do topo on this. The parcel A has WW permits and I've noted on the plan. So the well, the water systems, the septic systems for both those properties have been taken care of with the state. So it's, and we retained, if you'll note, we retained on the road 52 feet to access parcel B.
Will anything be done with the structures that are part of the subdivision there in parcel A?
No,
They'll stay the same.
they have a tentative buyer and he's just gonna renovate. But there's no talk about expansions or anything like that. And that would come under the purview of the state if they changed anything, if they add bedrooms. Anything of that nature, they'd have to go before the state, so they're leaving it just the way it is.
Norman, did you have a question?
Go ahead.
Nice to see you, my old friend.
No.
Last time recall seeing you, neither you or I had gray hair.
Funny how that happens. At
I
least we
understood,
got some.
I,
good point.
I understood you to say that you left the sewer and water to both properties as they are. And I just want to make sure I understood that there is no sewer and water or permits applying to the same with respect to the 5.56 acres.
Correct.
So what you meant is that on parcel A, there's no changes, in parcel B, there's no changes.
No,
Okay, thank you.
If I read this correctly, there's a driveway that extends beyond the boundary, I guess that's the eastern boundary,
yes,
of parcel A and runs through parcel B. That's going to require an easement, is that correct?
no,
No?
that 15, are you referring to the 15-foot right away? Or that driveway?
I'm referring to the driveway that
Oh,
seems
that
to cross,
driveway.
that seems to cross parcel B to get to, I'm assuming, well, no, I don't know what,
Where does it go?
where does it go?
It just goes, it's kind of weird up there. So Killington Heights
Yeah,
uses this whole area, like where that 15-foot right of way is for parking for the condos and stuff that they got there.
Huh.
So,
that comes to the boundary of the eastern boundary of parcel B now, correct?
yes,
Okay,
So this driveway wouldn't have an easement across the Smith property.
they haven't decided.
They haven't decided.
but it's not landlocked because there's a driveway out to Route 4, is that correct?
Right.
Yep, okay.
Well, they will own, parcel B will own in fee 52 feet on Route 4.
Oh, yeah, up on the eastern side, in the
Yeah.
northeast corner there.
Yeah,
Yep, I see that.
okay,
No, I
so,
was just talking about parcel A not being, parcel A also borders Route 4 and has according to the diagram here, has a road that does
yeah, they have an
uh,
existing driveway.
like existing driveway.
Yeah.
That goes out to Route 4. Okay,
Well, they'll have a second driveway, Mark. Typically, they'll go, the one that you said that comes from Killington Heights that they can use to get to the, or what will happen to that driveway? What,
yeah, that was my question.
You know, they could, or to access that, they could use that 15-foot driveway and be their only access, but my suggestion was to keep at least 50 feet. Who knows what they're gonna do with it down the road? I mean, if you wanted to subdivide it, you certainly wouldn't want a 15-foot roadway to a, 2-3 lot subdivision. I mean, if I was in the planning stages. So this way, they're covered. And if you look out by the northeast corner of parcel A, there's a manhole there. So we got Alpine Sewer there at our disposal. Yeah,
So there is some potential
yeah,
for the 5 acres.
So I think that driveway, Howard, you're talking about is this driveway that crosses B. If that is maintained, then there will be an easement.
yeah,
across the street.
right.
But that's just, it's planning, so no one really knows if that driveway will be something that is firm.
And it is used now or not?
I was using it when I was working on this, but I didn't see anybody else going in and out of it.
And that's access through Killington Heights.
Yes,
I see a driveway that feeds or serves parcel A, the apartment. I don't see anything that serves the house or any access off that serves the house.
Well, it comes off, and this is Route 4 right here.
Yeah,
That driveway goes right in.
well, this driveway goes up here, seems to serve here. I don't,
Well, it serves both the house and the apartment.
okay.
Is what it's for. They're both.
yeah, they both use it. It's a common parking area.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you.
So Bill, what do you need us to do to
Uh,
keep this moving?
So on the Form 1, you gotta fill in the bottom parts there, whether it's a major or minor.
It would be a minor.
Yeah, so you need to do the Form 1, the bottom part of that, see if everything is okay on what's required.
And we don't do a lot of these. Do we need to fill out the 8 criteria before we have a hearing?
That's usually what you've done in the past is if those are all satisfactory, then you can say, we're ready to move on for a hearing. If something's missing, then you would say, no, we're not. Come back with it.
Okay. Does anyone see any issues with those 8? Since we have a survey already done, and does everyone have a copy of Form 1 and the 8
Yep.
criteria?
Yes,
Okay.
I do.
Other utility easements marked on here.
Utilities and utilities.
Yeah, it's number 6, Barbara. The other question is on water courses.
What would be the utilities? They'd be running up and down Route 4, wouldn't they?
I've got the power lines shown, the power poles going up Route 4, and there's also a power line that goes down along the property line on the east line.
And by Killington Heights, okay, I see those now. Those are the little circles with a slash in the middle.
Crosshatching it,
Yep,
yeah.
okay. And you pointed out the culvert, or not the culvert, the manhole in the northeast corner.
So are we satisfactory with all of these?
Are there any water courses
No,
around the company?
no, this parcel B actually is a pretty flat, but nice piece of property.
So parcel A is under contract and the owner is keeping parcel B.
Yes,
Okay, just to keep this moving along, so we've got the 8 criteria. Is there anything in there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
I've asked my questions, Barbara. I have no other questions, and I'm satisfied that it meets our criteria.
Howard,
Are there any wet areas?
no,
No,
Waivers will be if
when just Form 1, aren't we, Barbara? Or is something else we're supposed to be looking
we
at?
waive something with the trees and all of that stuff is.
yeah, we're,
I think it looks good.
I'm gonna put it's satisfactory for all of those on Form 1.
Yep.
And Mark, we don't meet, we meet every 3 weeks
Mhm.
now. So the next meeting would be the 26th of January. Is that convenient for?
somebody will show.
Okay.
So the hearing date will be 1/26.
2023. Do we have any additional requirements? Is this, Bill, is this considered the final plat?
Well, I guess.
For a minor subdivision, I think there is only one plat. Is that right?
Sorry?
For a minor subdivision, there's only one plat, so this, the answer to that should be yes, or, okay.
Because because you're not, if you're not making, if you're not saying changes need to be made, then
Right.
it can serve as the final one, yeah.
Right. Okay, and should we just save this for the hearing?
Yes.
What is this? Barbara?
Form 2.
Form 2, okay, yep.
So, okay,
Barb, just
yeah,
one question, on that driveway that's coming down from Killington Heights again, would that be better if that were a dash line, a dotted line or something? Those solid lines.
Yeah, if you,
I don't- It looks like it's something that may go away, from what you're saying, it,
yeah,
I don't know,
you think it's
I
worth,
mean, we can,
I wouldn't redo the whole map for that, that's what you gotta do, but no.
Because that represents what is currently in place, correct?
yes,
So that is, I mean, if it were a dash line, that would be a proposed one, would it not, Howard? If you change.
Well, I was
that.
thinking like the driveway, like you see up above, see the dash lines, the
Yep.
roadway going in, it's kind of, I was assuming it's like a driveway like that, it's just a
I see, okay.
travel way for a driveway, but it's clear, I mean, it's on parcel A. It's not a problem, I just was caught my eye, but.
Howard, do you want something just done for the Mylar? Just maybe,
Well, the solid lines just kind of puzzle me just a little bit because
I can change it. That's not a big deal.
maybe if they're dotted lines. if they're
Okay.
Dash lines, I think it might. But,
So just changing those two solid lines on
but-
either side of driveway to,
But on the other hand, the lower driveway, of course, those are solid lines, which are fine, so the driveway.
And there, that's
Right.
also paved. So
Okay.
that driveway's paved, so that's why it got in there as a solid line.
Okay,
so
sure.
the driveway that goes east out of property A is paved.
No, the.
The one that goes north.
No,
off
the
of-
the one that goes north, out to Route 4,
Out to Route
that's
4,
all paved,
but the other one is not.
correct?
So are you saying, Howard, that can be represented differently?
Well, my first thought was a dotted line, but I'm not sure it's necessary. I don't think it means anything at this point.
It-
Okay.
It doesn't.
I can certainly make it happen. That's not a big deal.
Norm,
I realize this already has a permit, but I have some small concern about the width of the driveway from Route 4 up to the two properties on parcel A. How wide is that?
8 feet.
Ooh. Is that sufficient for the fire department?
it should be, I mean,
It's a normal
it's a pretty
driveway.
wide
width.
driveway.
That house has been there for 50, 60 years with the same driveway. I can't imagine asking them to change it.
Well, I just remember a situation a couple years ago where I'd never paid much attention to that, and all of a sudden it made considerable sense to me.
Actually, for the previous owner, I did some work there with Green Mountain Power, changing their power poles around. I have no problem taking my truck in there and turning around. I think on looking at it here, Norm, it may look narrow, but it's certainly adequate for any
Okay.
kind of,
Jerry, if you
Pete
said
is-
so, I'm convinced.
And it's paved.
it's big.
And yeah, well, that's helpful.
I think, it's a little hard to see on paper, but it's plenty adequate to get anything. in
Thank you.
there.
Thanks, Jerry.
Okay,
Good.
so I guess we're not requesting any changes to the
Okay.
plat. And we'll have a hearing on the 26th. We usually do those right at the,
We can,
not top of the hour, but top of the meeting, 6:30.
Okay,
Okay,
sounds good.
thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Barbara, do you need a motion?
They're drinking on the way in.
Early
Yeah.
payoff, I can't. On the way
Motion
back.
to accept the application and schedule a hearing?
Except the, yes,
Okay. I will make a motion to accept the application. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Of Howard Smith, of the South Howard Smith subdivision on Route 4 East, and to warn a hearing for January 26th.
There a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, Howard,
I told-
any discussion? Mary Beth, you okay?
Yeah,
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I,
Unanimous?
We can go back in one, like, wanna go back?
Good. Okay, next on the agenda.
Barbara, I've got two.
Okay. All right,
Oh, three, I guess, if Norman's is coming.
nobody wants any souvenirs?
Norman. We can use them next time.
Yeah. Okay, the next thing on the agenda, this is pretty much, I would think this would just be a discussion item tonight. Bill was, he went to VLTT about the existing streets and sidewalk ordinance, because there are a number of references in the subdivision ordinance that we're redoing.
Yep.
So Bill, you just wanted,
So as kind of a test case, I asked VLCT to review our street and sidewalk ordinance to get the timeline and the cost, and the response I got was not what I was expecting. They said basically in regard, so I gave you all a copy of the email just so you guys sit their thoughts about it, but essentially they're telling us to just throw the thing out.
What?
We want, keep one section of our street sidewalk ordinance about 911 addressing, get rid of the rest of it. Basically make them policies and not ordinances.
because of state statute.
Because the state, right, the state statute has the 911 addressing, but basically the rest of it, just make it a policy, like, okay, so. The short, one of the short answers was they charge $100 an hour to review ordinances. So if they're gonna go through our subdivision ordinance, it's gonna be at $100 an hour. And there is no limit, time frame, schedule, it's first in, first out, and as long as it takes. So. If we want to have them do the subdivision ordinance, that's what it would be. As far as the streets and sidewalk ordinance, that makes it a little more complicated. We can retain the ordinance, but they have declined to review it for legality. We could ask our town attorney to do it and see if he would be willing to do it for us, or we could take the approach and change it. However, that obviously has a rather substantial impact on the subdivision ordinance work that we're doing right now, because there are several significant references
Right.
to that document.
Is there a way to kind of MacGyver it so that the existing ordinance can, or what we come up with in the future for street naming and numbering is still referenced in what is going on with the subdivision ordinances, or,
So we could. So what I would, as I'm trying to think about this. So I think the correct long-term solution. By the way it sounds, would be to. Repeal the street and sidewalk ordinance as it is. Create a 911 addressing ordinance. Take that into effect, and then create a street and sidewalk policy for the town of Rutland. To then incorporate the topics that we've removed from the ordinance. So road construction, naming, acceptance of roads, all those things.
width of driveways.
Right, all the other stuff will become a street and sidewalk policy for the town of Rutland. Which, once it's a policy and not an ordinance, if we want to change the process. We recommend the change, it can be voted on, it can be done that day. There's no review process because it's not an ordinance. That's a benefit. So,
Bill, can I ask a question or interrupt? What are the criteria by which Vermont League of Cities and Towns is determining whether something can be whether something needs to be a policy, excuse me, whether something needs to be an ordinance or whether it can be a policy?
It's how statute is written.
It's state statute.
It's how, it's what state statute allows. I mean, it specifies this, and this
Yes.
is an ordinance, can be covered by an ordinance. And then anything else would be a town policy.
Right, which seems to make sense.
So currently, there is no state requirement or there is no state expectation that streets and sidewalks be covered as an ordinance.
There's no statutory requirement, nor there's no
Authorization
right,
or
there's no
authority.
statutory authority that says we can.
to
create
do that. Yep, got
It
it.
doesn't say we can't, but
Thank
it
you.
seems like we're better off. That seems to be the better approach to take. Is it more complicated now and time consuming? Absolutely. But in the long run, it would probably serve us better to fix it all.
Yeah,
So is that within our purview? Is that a select board thing?
So the select board is
an ordinance is,
informationally aware of, just anecdotally aware of this going on. I was hoping for a highway committee meeting, but we haven't been able to get one together lately, so I can kind of get into this with them, but
Norm, I see you, but an ordinance is the subdivisions is
Right,
the
is
select
our
board's
purview.
purview, yeah.
absolutely.
Whereas a policy would be select board, correct?
Well,
But both of them would be.
both of them would be, but I think if we were gonna make this kind of change, that could be something the select board could say, can you, say, Barbara, can you have your group work on this? I think that we could. I think that would be something we can
Sure.
dissect it, break it down and say, here's our recommendations and bring it back to them. And I think that would probably be the way to go.
The only reason I asked the question is because ordinances are within our purview. But policies technically, generally speaking, are not, correct? So we would need authorization from the board, select board, to actually work on a policy that is not normally within our purview.
Right.
Okay, I just
So-
wanted to,
Just
Yeah.
the blessing to do the work.
Yeah, we
Correct.
would, we would do that anyway. Norm,
Yes.
you've been waiting quite a while.
Yeah, thank you. I have some concerns. And basically, as I understand it, if we have a policy, it's not enforceable. If we have an ordinance, it is enforceable. I don't know whether we can incorporate our policies into an ordinance by reference. I guess that's another question. But what I'm getting down to is that, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years ago, I began to understand better and appreciate the fact that the driveway construction was a serious matter for fire department access. And what would concern me with the policy path as opposed to the ordinance path is that we could have a policy that says all new driveways have to be XYZ feet to accommodate fire trucks and emergency vehicles. And we couldn't enforce it if it was violated. And that concerns me.
Well, are there enforcement? You gave us a handful of examples,
Yeah, so
Bill.
these examples come from, there's a few examples I gave you. And those they came as examples from the league. And he references them there, but he says, we did not review these for legality. So these are just ones they pulled as
True.
examples, but not ones they said that they've actually reviewed themselves. So,
Yeah, and
well, the Sharon one is almost as long as the ordinance would be anyway. so.
My suggestion is we look, if we have questions, we just look these over for the next meeting and not take a lot of time tonight,
oh yeah, no, this was not something to get deep into tonight. for sure.
flipping through pages and.
And
right.
yeah,
But is there anything before we meet that you want to take to the select board? Any question or preference?
that this. We we've done some really good work on the subdivision ordinance.
Yes,
This doesn't really stop it, but it slows it down pretty effectively because the references we make to the street sidewalk ordinance need to be whatever document ends up being is the reference, like that's.
We can't adopt the new,
adopt it
we
without-
can't
Without that.
without
Right.
the references to an existing
Right.
document.
So
So
what we can do, it almost becomes a parallel project is this. we
Yep.
can Keep doing the subdivision work. And the adoption, because we're gonna end up probably repealing streets and sidewalks, which is the same. It's the same pathway, just two different words for that, so we can do it simultaneously. Where we enact the policy, repeal the ordinance and adopt the new one, or adopt the changes, so it can all be one. Big
right, right.
thing
Right.
for me to shuffle, but
Yeah, I am a little concerned about opening a can of worms that maybe some of our other ordinances are really policies. But
Well-
let's hope that doesn't happen.
but I don't think the subdivision one reference, I don't think we have references to other.
only
True.
stormwater, which
Well,
is
but
which
that's-
is an ordinance because
That's
that
brand
came
new,
down from
yeah,
the state.
that's
So
okay.
True, but if we start setting the precedent, like, oh, we have to split this up into an ordinance and a policy. I'm wondering if we do want to ask the select board, there must have been some reason to enact all of these ordinances that we have in the town, including the driveway one.
That's part of the streets and sidewalks, so.
which would
Yeah.
just become which would just become incorporated in a policy. So
So-
if I, yep, sorry, Barbara.
So between now and our meeting in 3 weeks, we can review this stuff, but do you want me to go to the select board and ask them why it was set up this way? So we have a little more background. Norm,
Well, I think if you have the time and check the ordinances and the dates of adoption, I don't think the current select board is going to be able to answer that because some of those things, I'm sure, go back years and years and years. So they'll not know why they may not know why they adopted it or not adopted it, but if you want to ask, it can't hurt.
yeah,
My understanding is they adopted ordinances because they didn't want to adopt have a zoning. But that's just speculation.
right, it was kind of a step
Hmm.
in between, it was a step between a policy and zoning.
Mhm.
Kind of a. Dana,
That's why we continue to do it.
I think it would be a good idea to get some direction from the select board, but being proactive and thinking about what questions the select board might want to have for us. I'm wondering, Bill, if we could pull out of the subdivision ordinance, any reference to current ordinances such as streets and sidewalks, just whatever they are. And ask the Vermont League of Cities and Towns if any of those other ordinances that we reference should not be ordinances, but policies. Because when we go to the select board, if we authorize Barbara to go to the select board and ask the question, it would be meaningful for her to be able to say, we are currently working on with the Vermont League of Cities and Towns on any other references in our subdivision ordinance that may not be ordinances, but be policies, and then we will update them about that. I'm just trying to anticipate that whatever their answer is to us in terms of that work, that they would want to make one sweeping authorization for us to continue
there's
the
like
work
20 ordinances, aren't there, something like that?
Quite a few, yeah.
that are referenced in the subdivision.
No, just in total.
83.
Yeah, that's all I'm asking is, at this point in time, I'm trying to limit the scope of our work to what's in front of us and where we are with respect to the subdivision ordinance. And get authorization from the select board, for the select board to know that we're working on identifying any other ordinances that are referenced in there. To find out from Vermont League of Cities and Towns whether they should be policies or not. So that when we can then continue our work and move from, if Barbara goes to them and asks for authorization on streets and sidewalks, that any other ones that Vermont League of Cities and Towns would identify for us, we will bring back to them for the similar authorization.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it seems to make sense that like, we've discussed the league's recommendation and, that the groups wanted to take it on and would you like us to do that? And they'd be like, yeah. Now, in terms of what I'm gonna be, between now and the next meeting, I have a very full schedule. So I'm probably not gonna get too much into that in the next 3 weeks. I just really won't. So because of meetings, I have town report next week, like that's all I'm doing. So
My point was just for Barbara to be
Yeah, so-
armed with a decision that we'll be looking
right,
at.
so-
Not that we need that before the next planning commission meeting.
Yeah, so. Yeah. I think that, well, the stormwater one, we know it needs to be an ordinance.
Right, so that's pretty clear.
Yeah, so I'll see if there's any other, but there might not even be any others at this point, so.
There you go. So if there aren't, then it's a moot point, but
Yeah, would you take a look through when you can, the next few days and see if
Yeah.
there would be other ones, okay?
I
Nora?
can do the same thing, Bill, if that would be helpful also, because
Yes.
we've reviewed that pretty in depth.
I just am sort of lost with the respect to policy ordinance, where policies aren't enforceable.
I don't know for sure if that's true.
Okay, well, that's the assumption I think we're operating on at the moment.
I mean, I think policies are written so that someone in town government is responsible for enforcing what that policy says.
Okay, that's not what I understood. And I've
I mean, if
understood.
it's highway related or something like that. Okay, well, it's not what you understood where.
Well, I mean, I understand an ordinance to be enforceable. It's adopted by the town, it's legislation, it provides for enforcement, usually in its terms, like we've done with various violations that we've done here. A policy is an expression of desire, but not necessarily enforceable. And so maybe we have to find that out before we get lost. Is the policy enforceable? Because if a number of these ordinances that we have are deemed policies or made policies by our action and they're not enforceable, I think the select board needs to know that, and we need to know which path we're following. And I don't think we need to take up any more time about it. And I think the first step is to find which of our ordinances contain provisions that are not appropriate within an ordinance because they're policy.
Well, we are, I think we want to start with the subdivision ordinance and whatever is in its orbit.
Right.
And that's it,
Right.
not go with all,
Right.
not look at all 20
No. that-
ordinances
that would
right
make a
now.
difference.
Okay,
Yeah,
and then I guess we'll learn the answers to the other question.
Yep.
Once we learn what is policy and what is not statute, in a sense. Statute meaning local statute, not state statute.
Bill, I didn't take a close look at these examples from other towns. But in the ones that are policies, do they list enforcement actions?
Sharon does not. I just looked through that one for that thing. I was thinking when you guys were talking about that, I'm like, I wonder if Sharon says anything about enforcement. There wasn't anything that I saw quickly.
If I may make one comment that may be helpful, may not be, so I will just make the comment and then you can close the debate if you like. Within the realm of school boards, which are also quasi-governmental agencies, their purview, their legislative purview is policy. So by analogy, it would be the same as for a select board, and there can be provisions for the enforcement of those policies if that is needed. And then there's also a recourse for redress and so on and so forth. So I think it's just the jurisdiction that is different, but I don't have enough experience, honestly, Barbara, that's why I asked the question earlier, of the difference between an ordinance and a policy. But policies are legislative actions for school boards. So I would assume that policies are legislative actions for select boards, but I don't know enough about that to be.
2 ordinances, street sidewalks, stormwater. That's it.
So the answer is we don't have any others, and that's the only one that we need authorization for. So thanks.
Bill, Bill, would you have,
Excuse me.
Excuse me.
Pardon me.
would you have time, okay, we've got that covered. Would you have time to ask VLCT for a definition, for definitions of ordinances versus policies?
Well, we'll see. I have hard deadlines for next week, so
Yeah,
that's, there's not, I can't do anything else till that's done, like I just.
okay, I can do it.
Makes me, those deadlines make me very nervous, so do I have your report, by the way?
Okay, I'll do it. I'll get back in touch with Garrett.
Yeah, just, I gotta get this report done because I have 6 days to get this room filled and cleared, so that's challenge. Do I have a report, by the way?
No,
Oh,
I just saw the deadline today on my calendar. I was like, oh my God.
you have 4.5 hours to get.
Oh my gosh.
Tomorrow will be great.
So do you want to make a motion or just by consensus, we'll get definitions and then ask the select board, tell them what we found out.
I'll be happy to make 2 motions, just for
Okay,
the record. So the first motion is that I would make a motion to authorize the chair to work with the administrative assistant to get clarification from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns on the definitions of policies and ordinances.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Howard, okay, thanks.
Okay. Do you want to make a double motion?
Can I do that?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, the second motion that I would like to make, that's on authorization, right? For you to talk to the select board, correct? Okay, just so I know what my motion's going to be. I'd also like to make a motion that we authorize the chair to approach the select board and ask for permission to work on the street and sidewalk policy and to provide background as to why we are changing the street and sidewalk ordinance to a policy. And for her to be able to provide that background and then ask for authorization for us to work on it, to incorporate into our subdivision ordinance.
Well put.
Thanks. Don't ask me to repeat that, though. It was stream of consciousness.
Is there a second
I'll second.
for the second motion?
Thanks, Sharon.
Second to second.
Discussion, Norm?
No, I want to speak against it.
Okay,
Well, okay, this
If
is.
it doesn't have a second.
It has a second.
Okay, I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. That's assuming we come back in a certain way from the VLCT inquiry. That's consistent with the second motion, and it may not be. And I just, let's just take it one step at a time.
Okay, and not let the select board know that there is this potential conflict?
Well, we're gonna go to we don't know whether there is or isn't. I
we
mean,
do.
my understanding of the motion, the second motion, is that we're gonna begin work as opposed to we're just exploring and finding out the definition, which I thought was the point of the first motion.
I thought I
True.
was seconding a motion that was, I thought the motion, the second one was to simply have you do further inquiry. Once
Yep.
we did the first one.
with,
What's the
with
person's
the,
work?
select board to let them.
I didn't look at it as there was any work being done. Other than Barbara getting some informational stuff.
Well, maybe I
Right.
did, maybe I didn't, excuse me, maybe I didn't understand the second motion.
That's how I thought it was, but maybe I'm wrong, Dan.
I can explain my second motion if that would be
Yeah,
helpful.
go ahead.
Don't ask me to repeat the second motion since it was fairly long and
Oh,
we'll take
why
it off
not?
the tape. My second motion was to, authorize our chair to speak to the select board to let them know, to inform them that our street and sidewalk ordinance cannot stand as an ordinance based on the review that the Vermont League of Cities and Towns has done and told us that it should be a policy. If that, if that's correct, and I believe that it is, because they're not going to review it as an ordinance, then the select board needs to know that, and that has implications for the work that we're doing on the subdivision ordinance. And we can't move forward with the subdivision ordinance, at least in my mind, until we have authorization from the select board to incorporate a change in the street and sidewalk ordinance to a policy so that we can incorporate it by reference into the subdivision ordinance. I probably have made that more confusing.
I
than
found
it
the
is.
VLCT document on the comparison. I'll have copies for you guys. I believe, so,
Okay,
On what comparison?
between a policy and an ordinance.
Oh, okay, that they have online. Okay, okay,
so I'm gonna withdraw my initial motion about having Bill find out the definition,
he'd already, yeah.
because he already had that information. So I'd like to withdraw that. Howard, you think,
Agreed, agreed.
you agree? So he's withdrawing the second. So there's only one
Only
motion,
one motion, which is, yeah.
which is to inform the select board of the perspective of the legal perspective of the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, and to authorize us to do whatever is necessary to change the streets and sidewalks ordinance to a street and sidewalk policy, which then the select board would have to review and approve.
A fact-finding mission.
A fact-finding mission. But that way we can continue our work on the subdivision ordinance and not have it remain in hiatus as a result of the legal feedback that we received from Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, I think.
Could you repeat that? No.
Oh,
No.
I'll get a dose with my water bottle.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the very concise motion that Dana has expressed twice,
Authorizing the chair to talk to the select board about the,
please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Mary
unanimous.
Beth, you out there?
Yeah, is it I?
Okay.
Okay, that's unanimous. Okay. So we'll be revisiting that one. So that leads us into anything that has been done in the last few weeks with the subdivision ordinance. I know, Danny, you've been busy with the rules of procedure.
Yeah, and so I can do a real quick overview. I know that we had several people present at the last subcommittee meeting
Mhm.
on the subdivision ordinance. So put me on a timer. I'll try to do this in 180 seconds. On
You got it.
December 19th, a group of us, Barbara, myself, Jerry, Norman, and Andy, I believe, if I've got everybody correctly, named, were present to have a discussion on several sections of the subdivision ordinance. And we reviewed the language, thank you, Mary Beth, that Mary Beth gave us with respect to Act 250 to be incorporated under 4.01 planning standards. All necessary state of Vermont permits shall be obtained prior to receiving final town subdivision approval. And please visit the state of Vermont's permit navigator site. And she gives the reference to enter information about your property and discover which permits are needed, which state permits are needed. So thank you, Mary Beth, for that. We reviewed that. The subcommittee thought that that was actually quite good. Actually, Howard, were you at that meeting too?
Not the first one, the second one.
The
I was at the
19th?
Second one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
sorry, I
yeah.
forgot, I left you off my list of people present. Anyway, we also reviewed any lingering questions that we had about sections 4.01 through 4.08. And wanted to thank Bill for all of the legwork that he did on those areas. And then we reviewed the remaining standards in section 4.0, including stormwater drainage, recreational areas, schools, and site preservation and improvements. We have still a few within that section to review on the 23rd. January 23rd, I'll get to that in just a second. Management organizations and the addendum. And we agreed that we would warn a meeting for January 23rd because we have a meeting at the incubator, I think, on this coming Monday at 4. That was another alternative date. So our next meeting would be at 3:30 on January 23rd. And I think, Bill, you and I have talked about it, but maybe we haven't. I can't remember. Okay, we haven't. All right, thanks. So it's only in my mind that I've talked about it.
Do we have a conflict on that day?
January 23rd,
Pre-town
meeting.
meeting.
we won't be here. We're gonna be leaving to go to the school. I mean, you could be here, fine. But I'm gonna be, this pre-town meeting, so
What time's that start?
6.
Oh.
But I'm gonna be getting all, I'm gonna be,
Yeah.
I won't be available for the meeting that day.
You won't be available for me.
Right. You can certainly, you're free to use the room, we won't be using the room that day, so.
And we don't have a whole lot left to go over, so. And that was basically a summary of what we covered. We had some substantive conversation about some of those remaining paragraphs and subsections. And I think it's reasonable to expect that in an hour or just maybe a little bit more than that, we should be able to finish going over the subdivision ordinance.
So that would
And-
start at 3,
3:30. I think that's what we've
3:30.
started them at 3:30.
3:30, and would it be a Zoom meeting?
We can do either Zoom or presence here. If you can just get it, can you get that set up for me? I can close it out afterwards, but
And you have time to warn this?
For the 23rd?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
okay.
48 hours. all I need.
You're just scaring me with your
It's-
schedule.
Yeah, I got a busy month.
Okay. Pretty much wrapped up, Dana?
that's it. I tried to do
Okay.
it in 180 seconds. I'm not sure I made it, but
Just, yeah, pretty much.
good.
So, okay. The 23rd, the next committee meeting there. Let's move down to rules of procedure. And that you do have some things for us
Yes.
to
Uh,
consider tonight, and maybe adopt.
I think we can get close to being there. I have a couple of thoughts. This may take a few minutes, but I did want to say a few things about the latest draft and version. And first of all, I want to start by thanking everybody that's helped contribute to the rules of procedures, because I think everybody has had a hand in it. And particular shout out to both Barbara and Mary Ashcroft, who over the last week have dedicated significant amount of time to clarifying certain aspects and helping me at least wrap my mind around some of the provisions that we've been talking about. So it's provided great clarity for me. The one thing that I do want to say that I have not done, and Barbara, you gave me this task when we met last week, was to review the shalls and the wills.
Mhm.
I haven't had a chance to really
Okay.
do that, and I know that some of the language has changed. And I wanted to make sure that we had the right language before we do the final
Okay.
edits on
Okay.
shalls and wills, but I mean, that's somewhat insignificant. The other thing that I wanted to say is that I think I put this in my email last night, but it was getting late and I was getting a little foggy. But Mary made a good suggestion that on the, with respect to, the organizational part. And it was under paragraph 1 under organization, the body shall annually elect a chair and vice chair. We went around and around and we said that we were going to do that at the first of the year, our first meeting in January. Mary reminded me that the organizational meeting of the select board happens in March. And reappointments happen later after the select board has reconvened and reorganized itself annually
Reappointments to this
to
group.
this group.
Yeah.
And so she said that that would be the right timing for us to really review these procedures as we reorganize ourselves. So I thought that that made some sense. The only thing that means is that, well, it means two things. One, that we wouldn't need to adopt this right away, right now, unless we're ready to do that. And it would also allow us a little bit more time if people wanted to pass it by legal review, which I know is something that has come up. Norman mentioned it, Barbara, I think you mentioned it, and Mary Ashcroft also said that there's money that if we wanted to have our rules to be reviewed, if we still had any lingering questions, that would give us time to have that done properly. And then that would be an annual event that we would review these after our reorganizational meeting in March, for what that's worth. So that's just some of the backdrop. Anyway, so
In that one, do we want to get any more specific than annually?
she said no. That's why I put it back. She said that was a little bit of a deviation from the model policy from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, and she's correct. I went back and checked that. So I don't have a preference one way or the other. She made a good argument that seemed to be logical in my mind, and that that would be something that we would just put on our docket of tasks to do. Bill, does that sound reasonable in your mind? I know that you were on it with us in October because we had adopted it in October.
Yep.
But from your perspective administratively, the timing of that really doesn't matter, does it? Or so I would just then put it on the docket for, late March meeting, or maybe even an April meeting, if that's what we were going to do moving forward. But she thought that it was better to leave it a general, so that you're not tied to violating your own procedures if you don't do it then. So anyway, that's why I put it back into gray. So that's, if you're looking at your rules of procedure that you either printed or Bill gave you, that is paragraph 1. And I will beg Bill's indulgence for the really screwed up numbering that I have. Mary was telling me that paragraph 3 should follow paragraph 0.5, because the two of them dealt with a similar topic. And I said, sure, I'd be happy to include that there. Bill was going to renumber things anyway, so.
Okay.
And the other thing that I want to say is Norman sent out a list of his notes, comments this afternoon or this morning, whenever it was. And he and I spoke and I think resolved all of those topics. Is that correct, Norman? Does that make sense to
So
you?
that nothing needs to change from what you are working from.
There were a couple of things I had omitted a word when I was taking out all of the highlighting. I inadvertently deleted a word which I put back in, and I can reference that for the group. So at that point, that's the background information. And if you'd like, I can go point by point, and we can decide whether it's set and ready to go. What I did was in yellow highlight, I put the initials of the folks that were consulting on some of these with me, and I put my name if it was my initiative. So the one thing that I would say is that on 0.5, Mary Ashcroft, I omitted her accidentally, but she was also had input into 0.5 for the wording. So first one, Mary's suggestion that we add as appointed by the select board. Since we don't make up our own committee. That seemed like a reasonable addition. Any thoughts, comments, or questions about organization, paragraph 0? As appointed by select board? No? Anybody else? All right, I'm gonna check that off then, and that's all set and ready to go. In paragraph 0.5, there were a couple of edits, grammatical error edits or typos as a result of changes. So to constitute a quorum, members present. Those were just a shift in the wording. I think Barbara and I had discussed that, if I'm remembering correctly, and I made note of that. So that's all that is. It didn't change the substance of that line. The last line under 0.5, something that Barbara and I discussed, and then Mary said that this was something that that we should include. If we're going to be saying that a majority of commissioners present at a meeting at which a quorum is present shall be the act of the commission, which we had talked about last time. She suggested that unless it was otherwise required by state statute or identified in our rules of procedure, that will allow there not to be a conflict with another paragraph. I think it's paragraph 5 down below, where we wanted to change the wording to a majority of the members constituting a full planning commission membership. So that would be 7. So that there are times when we really would need to have 4 affirmative votes. If not for statutory provisions, for political reasons, that we don't want to give the impression that less than a majority of our membership is acting on policy decisions. And I can explain that a little bit later. But anyway, that's what that line is designed to help address. In paragraph 3, Mary had suggested that paragraph 3 be moved up because it talks about a quorum being present and how the membership is constituted and when we use alternates. So I moved that up, and then Barbara and I talked about just striking the first line of that because it's redundant with the previous paragraph. Does that make sense to you, Barbara? Is that your recollection? Okay. Questions, comments, or observations regarding those 2 paragraphs?
They're gonna be combined together when you say you're gonna move it up.
Well, no, we're gonna, in other words, 0 will become 1, 0.5 will become 2, 3 will still be 3, but it will appear right after the preceding paragraph because they're so close in their intent and what they're talking about. So they won't be combined, they'll be separate paragraphs, but they will just follow each other as opposed to being separated by other intervening paragraphs. You're welcome. And then we'll number after that 4, 5, 6, etc. Other questions or comments on paragraph 0.5 or paragraph 3?
Nope, I think you can proceed.
That sounds good. Okay, super. I already explained annually. That was a Mary suggestion, so I put that back in paragraph 1. I think we're good on that unless you tell me otherwise. Norman pointed out that I shouldn't capitalize statute, so I will correct the I will correct the capital S in 2 places on statutes. Paragraph 0.5 and paragraph 2. My apologies. And proceedings by applying these rules. Oh, that was also a Mary Ashcroft suggestion that in paragraph 2, we add by applying these rules and state statutes and making determinations about all questions of order or procedure.
Of the 1, 2, 3, 4, the 1, 2, 4 are what we have in the rules of procedure right now, and then You moved up these other ones.
I moved up 3 ahead of, 1, 2, those 1, 2, 4, and 5 will just be renumbered.
Yeah.
I think, Bill, you're good with that.
And
number.
I think it makes sense that they're little less important than
Yeah.
the ones you have at the top now.
I wasn't looking at it from that perspective, but thank you. So then, there was no change on paragraph 4. I don't think anybody made any suggestions on paragraph 4, so that's still okay. And then paragraph 5, once again, I have to give a lot of credit to both Mary and Barbara for helping me come up with, or prompting me to come up with language that might help us here. So that new language in gray, beginning with the third line, majority. A motion will pass only if it receives the votes of a majority of the total membership of the body, 4 out of 7 for matters of public policy such as subdivision permits. Mary made the suggestion that we are sometimes acting on policy and sometimes we're just acting administratively to get business done. And something that is an administrative business does not require the same level of what's the word? Participation or requirements as some of the statutory work that we do.
Same level of formality.
Same level of formality, thanks. So majority, and this is one of the things that Barbara had talked about several times, but so that we weren't coming into conflict with some of the things that are just administrative matters that we can do without that level of majority, it was important to keep that in here. For the approval of minutes, this is also a Mary Ashcroft suggestion because I talked to her about those as well. For approval of minutes, a simple majority of the members present at the previous meeting voting in the affirmative will constitute formal action for the adoption of approved minutes. And she made the note there, which I had already researched anyway, but she said the approval of minutes is just for ensuring accuracy and it's not a matter of public policy. And it's not statutory. Our statutory provision says that we have to post our draft minutes within 5 days. That's a requirement. So Bill has the obligation of getting those posted. But for us to just read them, approve them in terms of saying that, yes, this is exactly what happened, or this is an accurate representation of what has happened, should only require a majority of the people present to be able to do that. Now, Mary did say that the select board, sometimes if they have only 3 people present at a select board meeting, and at the following meeting, they only have 2 out of the 3, they wait and table the minutes.
They do that a lot.
Huh?
They do that a lot, but
Yeah,
you're saying that they're still using the simple majority rule there,
simple majority.
right?
Right. And so that's what I'm suggesting here is that a simple majority. So the time when Jerry wasn't here and because I'll talk about this in conjunction with the next paragraph, which is abstentions, which Barbara also charged me with the task of trying to craft. Because when people abstain because they weren't present to be able to say that that was what we talked about, they have read it. And if it sounds reasonable, they could vote in the affirmative, but you can't tell somebody that they have to vote. So you allow them to abstain, but it doesn't affect the simple majority at the meeting. And so we could move minutes along a little bit more efficiently. So anyway, we'll come back to that. I'll ask if you have any questions. When we look at 5A, which will be renumbered some of them. For voting purposes, abstention shall be defined as declining to vote for or against the proposal or motion. Abstention should be used judiciously and particularly in the case of conflict of interest with commissioners recusing themselves from participation. That's already stated someplace. I think that's in our ethics statement. But I reviewed this also with Mary. From participating in any discussion in which a conflict of interest is identified, real or perceived. We can talk about that. Abstentions will not affect the result of a vote. So in other words, it's not a vote against, it's not a vote for. It's just something that is noted so that people can express their lack of either participation or awareness of the topic. Notwithstanding the use of abstentions in the cases of public policy, 4 affirmative votes shall still be necessary to constitute an official act of the body. So, in other words, if there are people who abstain from an act, say that we only have 5 people and we have a hearing. I'm not saying that this has ever happened or would happen, but if we have 5 people present at a hearing, and as we did tonight, I made a motion, it was unanimous, it all passed. But if somebody doesn't have enough of a background and they say, I'm going to abstain, and if 2 people abstain and we only have 3 votes in the affirmative, that would not be an act of our body. We would need a 4th person to not abstain. So maybe that would be additional discussion, and then the person who had abstained could vote, but we have to have affirmative action in order to be able to pass matters of policy. Once again, that was Mary's perspective, having done this for many years, and she feels that that's the way the select board operates with respect to those matters as a legislative body, and would recommend that we would do that to make sure that we would avoid any political fallout for somebody saying you're making decisions with less than a majority of the membership voting positively. And I think that that makes sense.
Mhm. It might take some practice as we go through meetings to figure out, is that a policy, a public policy?
Or is
Or
it
is that
just?
just administrative?
Right.
So
Well, one of the
we'll
examples, yeah,
get used to it.
is already in here. I think it's number 3. We don't have any questions on this, but under agendas, number 3. I'll just read this very quickly. It's paragraph 3 under agendas D. All business shall be conducted in the same order as it appears on the noticed agenda, except that any additions or deletions from the noticed agenda may be made as the first act of business at the meeting. No additions or deletions from the agenda shall be, and this is where Norman told me that I missed the word, and I included that in my next version, but the word that was missing is considered. Thanks. So anyway, considered once the agenda has been approved. Any other adjustment to the agenda, for example, changing the order of business, postponing or tabling actions, may be made by a majority of the voting body. So in other words, it doesn't require 4. If there are only 5 of us present, it just requires 3 people to say, yes, we want to change the order, and 2 people can abstain. But that way we're not bogging down our work by something that's an administrative one. And yes, Barbara, you're absolutely right. We have to determine whether we are actually legislating something or whether we're just trying to move our work along. But I think if we use that as the litmus test, it should be pretty easy.
For most meetings, the administrative stuff would be the agenda and the minutes.
Right, and something else as to if we wanted to set another meeting, or ask Bill to warn a meeting for us or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but yes, there aren't too many that would fall into that category, but the wording now, I think, is from all of the various paragraphs, now allows us the flexibility to differentiate between those tasks. Whew. So I will go back for the moment and look at, do I have anything else on here?
I see something right after that one, that number 3, down in meetings.
Yep.
So we still have the old language that the first meeting of the new calendar year is when we reorganize ourselves. So we need to,
A regular meeting schedule for the planning commission shall be established at the first meeting of the new calendar.
oh,
year.
meeting schedule. Okay, never
Yeah,
mind.
that's okay. That's different.
Yes, that's different.
I had the same question last night, Barbara, when I was reading that, but
Yeah,
I think that it makes sense because that's when we do the calendar year.
yeah,
So,
yeah, it makes perfect sense.
yep, it caught me, it threw me for a loop, but I almost changed that and I said, oh, that's not what we're talking about, because it's not reorganization. It's just letting people
So
know.
on page 3 and number 4, what's highlighted there?
That's just for Bill, so that he knows that he's got to make the appropriate reference to the number, because that section C, is where I've got all of my different numbering system and none of it is sequential. So
Okay.
Bill is going to have to renumber them and then make reference to the appropriate section, which is currently numbered 7, I believe. But I couldn't wrap my mind around changing all of the numbers until we were done.
Okay, so since we just got this latest version yesterday.
Yep.
and Since we still have a question about the annual elections.
Yep.
Do we want to table this until the next meeting?
That's fine with me. I just want to find out if there's any, well, at the last meeting in, not the last meeting, the meeting in, yes, it was the last meeting. It was the meeting in December 8th. You had some tasks that you wanted me to work on in terms of changing some of the language, and I did those. Then I made additional mistakes, but so if there's anything that you want me to change or to look at, please let me know now. But the word considered is already included, and I made a change on my document at home, but I haven't sent that updated document to you, Bill. Actually, did I? No,
What you sent me today is the one I printed on your desk.
that's the one. Yeah, I've made some corrections to that since, based on Norman's feedback.
Okay, so is everyone okay with just tabling this?
I just had one comment. I spoke with Dana at some length about it. And that's on page 3, paragraph 4. And it begins with the sentence halfway through, if a quorum or more of the body attend a meeting without being physically present at a designated location, the agenda for the meeting shall designate at least one physical location where a member of the public can attend and participate in the meeting. It just doesn't follow logically, because if some of us attend by Zoom, like Mary Beth has tonight, this calls for in a sense, for the agenda to identify that when it's already past the time when the agenda is out.
Well, the agenda always comes out. Norman, you and I talked about this.
Yeah,
The agenda always comes out with Bill saying that here is the physical location and here's the option for Zoom participation.
And it's just assumed that all of our meetings are going to be hybrid. They're going to be both. So we have to.
Just so it's on, no, I'm not arguing with Dana. I just want to make sure that it's clear that this is what we're doing. And we're satisfied this by the agenda always. And I thought I told you I was going to speak to it if I
Yeah,
didn't.
that's fine.
Sorry. Well, because it seems to me it's awkwardly worded, but if we're meeting it and we're giving that information on a consistent basis, I'm comfortable.
That language, that paragraph is in, it's either verbatim or very close to the open meeting law on the Secretary of State website.
Right.
So that is the language that they're using for open meeting law. So you have to have physical location. That's how they worded it.
And it's always been a physical location prior to COVID. COVID just made it a little more expansive and made it a little more accessible. And they just asked the people continue with that. And so I think that what we're doing is basically complying with that. And I mean, we could probably omit it completely, but I think this is one of those questions of transparency, and you want to just say that there will be a physical location if you want to come to a meeting. Even though everybody might be on the screen, you can sit here and access.
It's already, Norm, it's already baked into the agendas. It's on every agenda.
It's just, it just logically doesn't make sense, but practically what we're doing cures that. And I just
Yeah.
wanted that discussion out.
It meets the law, and the open meeting law changed during the pandemic. It allowed just Zoom meetings, just remote meetings. And then when people started meeting together, it put in these restrictions that you'd have to let people know that, or you have to have someone at a physical location. And that's how it stands since then, since 2021 or something. After the emergency Vermont meeting law.
Yeah, and even previous to that, I remember with school boards over when I was in Woodstock, we would have people participate, and if it was a significant number, you just had to let people know that you could still come to the central office or the library at the high school and attend the meeting in person. Because other people were participating virtually. At that point in time, there was no provision for virtual participation for the public. It was only for board members, but anyway. But thanks, Norman.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think we'll just bring this up again, 3 weeks.
Okay, so as far as you can tell right now, there's nothing else that you want me to change in terms of the versions. So that what I will give to Bill are the corrections that I've already worked out with Norman since he gave me the feedback.
And do the shall and.
Yeah, we'll do a
may
review of that.
Run
Yep.
through.
Yep.
Yeah.
And some of the things, Mary actually made a couple of suggestions. Oh,
Hmm.
up in organization, I kind of glossed over this because it's so small. The planning commission, originally the word was shall be composed. Mary said it just is composed because that's the way the select board does it. So there was no need to have a shall directive in there. It is just a statement of fact coming from the select board. So yes, I will do that, probably help get Norman's help about whether we're doing shalls or wills or
Okay.
present tenses. But
Okay. Yeah, so, yeah, thank
Pretty-
you for your work.
you're
Laura,
welcome.
Thank you for your work, and Mary Ashcraft, wherever you are, thank you for all the time you put in on this.
Okay, so we'll just bring it up at the next meeting. Or
Let's adopt it next time.
as long, yeah, if people are comfortable, and feel free to reach out again if anybody has any questions. I am really pleased with all of the input that people have given, and I think it reflects that eclectic approach, so.
Okay. Next, the Pocket Park update. Mary Ashcroft and I are working on a MOU to present to Green Mountain Power, just so that we lay out the expectations of both parties, so that we can proceed, knowing that everyone is on the same page. So we're working on that. The select board asked for a 1-pager for the construction phases. I mentioned this at the last meeting, so I provided one with them. And I originally had the 3 phases, south end, north end, middle, but I added an alternative first phase, which is just to go in and start clearing and see what we had there. So they have that they're looking at. In the meantime, since GMP is part of their licensing, it's going to be doing this cultural assessment, archaeological assessment. I'm contacting the indigenous groups again. I haven't gotten hold of the Abenaki yet, but I did have a meeting with the Stockbridge Munsee people, and they are the Mohicans, more or less. And a very good conversation with the tribal preservation officer there. He had some great insights in how that area was probably used, and he thinks there's probably a high potential that resources were left behind, because because of the water there and the fishing, and they might even have used it year-round. His group has also offered to assist in compiling Native history and to work on any educational components if there are cultural resources found. On the request side, they would like the Pocket Park accessible to visiting delegations of tribal officials and elders. They want to be kept abreast of the cultural assessment methodology, and reporting. And he also requested that the town and GMP be mindful of any clearing work and do it during, avoid the spring, definitely. The earth is too soft. The clearing could be good and bad. It could expose resources, but it could also destroy resources. And so he wanted to have some say in that. And he also had some suggestions about stumping.
What
Trying
does
to
that, what does that
remember,
mean, Bob?
was that?
What does that mean?
Oh, if trees are taken down and the stumps are removed.
Oh, okay.
The tree, pulling something out of the ground can affect,
Disturb cultural resources or cultural
Yeah.
artifacts.
yeah. He also showed me a spear point that's called the Otter Creek Spear Point. They found it in Massachusetts, but it was first found, somewhere along the Otter Creek. That's why it was named that way. It was gorgeous, and it was this big. It was like 5 inches long and in perfect shape. So things like that, are very rare to find. But there might be other things there. That, could be linked to indigenous, or, there was an awful lot of settlement there, by Europeans too.
Yeah.
And, right up until, probably through some of the marble company days. So, needless to say, one of the things in the MOU was to really kind of get GMP to commit to this cultural assessment survey that they're doing. And I think I mentioned that it's probably going to be part of their license application. So that's why they volunteered to do it. And so we may want to wait until that's done before we do any construction work there. But that's still under discussion with the select board, and I'm open to any comments, any opinions you folks have there that I should take to the select board on that. It's kind of you want to keep things going, but sometimes these other things just slow the process down almost to a dead halt.
What was their reaction to the proposed 3 or 3.5 phase approach? How did they receive it?
Oh, so there wasn't any reaction to that per se. It was just pretty much, they assigned Mary to meet with me to kind of
Okay.
go over it and then go back to the select board.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's the Pocket Park right now. Any questions, comments? I think the next thing on the,
One question.
yeah,
Will we get a look at the memorandum of understanding, the commission?
oh, sure. Yeah. Before the select board finalizes it, is that your request?
I just think we should see what it is if we're bound by it. Some people may have some input.
So we'll ask for some consultation privileges there.
I'm sorry?
We'll ask to, that they consult us about it. Okay. Announcements, news, we've got the tour of the hub on a Monday, starting at 4. You bring anyone along that you'd like to. There's plenty of room there, and we'll have some good tour guides. And, it'll be interesting and just eye-popping, I guarantee. A couple other things, the survey, the energy survey has closed, and the energy committee, which is Mary Ashcroft, and a few members, Norm's on that, Sherman's on that, and I'm on that, representing this group. We'll meet to go over the survey and look at the results, and then make some recommendations. There is, I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but there is a significant new state program that's energy related that is for municipal buildings only. And it's to improve their weatherization and to, cut back in their energy use, whether that means putting in heat pumps or solar panels or whatever. It's a multi-year program. It's a $45 million program. It will start with an inventory of municipal buildings. And I'll work with Bill on that, which I think you already have a list, but we have a form to fill out for each building, so you're halfway there. And it will, and then towns can ask to be part of energy assessments, which are not full audits. They're more like walkthroughs, but that's a precursor to applying for some of the money for actual projects and construction. And it's statewide, it'll be competitive. And there are some towns that are on a list of paying more of individuals' incomes for energy than other towns. They will get priority. Rutland Town falls kind of in the middle of that, so it's not the best case, but we're still in the running. So that's the Municipal Energy Resilience Program, or Act 172. We'll be hearing more about that. And I had a question about, I was wondering if we are double booked for January 23rd. I have a note for a stormwater ordinance meeting to start. Yeah,
All I have is subdivision regs.
okay, so I'll go do a deeper dive in my notes, and I'm not even sure what we were going to do with the stormwater ordinance, other than,
Well,
included in the subdivision regulations.
weren't you going to have, was that, we were going to have that fellow from A&R?
Yeah,
And that's not it though, right? Because that was that was incorporating the new guidance from the state.
but it's not even a night we meet,
Oh,
so.
so I don't know. Because it's the 26th.
But yeah, that was another thing that occurred to me. Maybe, yeah, I'll double check with him on what dates we had already talked about.
Yeah, I
But
can't
it
remember
wouldn't be
those.
that date, so I don't know where I got that one.
Okay.
We'll just move on. Any other announcements or news? Mary Beth, anything?
No, nothing recreation really going on to report.
Okay. That time of year.
Yep.
Oh, that's good.
Okay, anything else? Let's go to the minutes of December 8th.
Move to approve the minutes from December 8th.
Second.
Okay,
Thanks, Andy.
they look pretty good. Any discussion?
Couple little nits, if I may. Couple corrections.
You're on.
Okay. First page, second line, under commission members present. Second sentence, all members in attendance. I think we can eliminate the word "a," so it reads "or," and added "s," to members, so it reads "are voting members for this meeting."
Huh?
It says all members in attendance are a voting member for this meeting, and I think it reads better if it says all members in attendance are voting members for this meeting.
Well, we do have in the rules of procedure, we just looked at, there is a term called voting member. And we use it.
Okay, then that's okay. If we like that,
So we'll leave it alone.
that's fine.
Okay, great.
In, well, old business. I just had might disregard it. Says there was a review. And I put "and discussion" of the changes. If you think review covers it, that's fine.
I'm not even sure where you were at.
Yeah.
Is that number 2 you're on?
Can't
or-
recently-
Number 2 under
Oh.
old business.
Well, you have old business 3 times. It's old business review of subdivision ordinance.
Here are the changes. It's fine. It's fine. Laura.
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't think that that's,
um,
anything else?
no, no. Well, it said, yeah, on approval of minutes. Second sentence, all members voted in favor of the motion except Mr. Hunter and Mr. McCain, who abstained. Should that be clear by putting who both abstained?
Nope.
Okay, then I have nothing else.
Okay. Ready for the question in the minutes? Approval of the minutes. All those in favor? Say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. And now. Anyone have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on the 26th for our hearing.